Ladies and gentlemen, grab your gloves and get your compost ready. Stepping into the ring is the perennial powerhouse, the sultan of soil, the beast of the beds, where permaculture reigns, food grows wild, community roots run deep, and yes, the garden puns hit hard. Freedom starts in the soil. This is the Guerrilla Gardening Show.
Welcome back to the Guerrilla Gardening Show. My name is Mike with Mike's in the Garden. Here with my man Sam from Central Florida Abundance. What's happening, Sam?
How's it going, Mark? Good to see you.
Yeah, Sam, I'm going to lean on you heavily for this episode because this is kind of what you do. Design and installation, right? You're pretty much on both sides of that.
Yeah, I mean, really, I help people be able to make informed decisions on their own, And so I think that's a lot of what we'll talk about is the resources and things you can draw on to make those decisions.
So I have a coworker. She just bought a house and she's got a tight spot. And so the plants and trees that I have that I would like to put in for her, get her, a nice little some food production going. I'm a little concerned with the space she has and the potential for these trees to cause some problems. So this episode, I'm going to aptly name planting trees in a tight space or something. Maybe AI can come up with something a little more wordy for me, but but it's tight space. So let me bring this video up here. And
I'm real interested to see what you got here.
Okay, so I need to get this out of here.
Are you filming this for the TikToks?
I did have to reconfigure this because before everyone used to film it sideways, and then now everyone films it right side
right.
up.
People used to make fun of you if you filmed it in this format.
Yeah, they were like, "Dude, turn your phone sideways."
Did you film that on your phone?
Yeah. Well, here we are. So,
it's got grass.
This is the front of the house. I'm not too worried, or do I think it's worth planting stuff here? But
this is on the street, right?
That's the street. So really here, so we see this yellow side door. So really this is the area that I'm looking to start with as far as this leads to her, that yellow door leads to her laundry room, which goes right into her kitchen. So I want to make it accessible for her to be able to walk right out. And so the big things I'm concerned with are she's on city sewer, so we don't have to worry about any kind of septic. There are some cleanouts, which I talked to one of the project managers, and he said that those are cleanouts for pests, termites. I'm not really sure.
It's like the little capsules in the ground.
Yeah, like you would have a clean out for a septic.
Yeah, but it's like a bait trap.
Yeah, okay. So this area right here, I was thinking would be a good spot for a future garden bed.
Do you know what direction what side of the house it is on? So
we are on the west side of the house. This video was probably shot at like 5-6 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's no trees pretty much anywhere around here. So this will get a lot of sun. But I think she kind of zooms in a little bit. So we've got the AC unit there. This is that little clean out, this little white PVC pipe here.
Yeah.
And then really this is, where she's parked here in the back. So I would like to put in a moringa tree. I have a loquat tree. Pineapples, not too worried about the pineapples. Longevity spinach, that might be something for the garden bed. This is all fresh sod. This house was just finished being built in July, so it was really just a couple months old, this house.
So
So
the soil is terrible.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we're gonna have to input this for sure. Um, but talk to me, Sam. What do you see here? What do you notice?
Well, my first thoughts, you said that door that we looked at goes into the kitchen.
Yep.
Like having, I mean, really what I would do in this situation is do some raised beds. Um, or, I mean, really, probably just raised beds. You could do it in the ground garden, uh, but it's going to take a lot of amending to build some soil there. Um, and like, if she's not, I mean, that's the other thing with the designs. It depends on the person. So since she's not here, I'll ask you a little bit about her.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of gardener do you think she's going to be? Is she someone who's in the garden, multiple times a day, or is the garden more of an afterthought?
Great question. Before she moved into this house, she was living with, she has a son. She was living with her mom, and she had, I wouldn't call it a food forest. It's kind of a garden, but has a lot of plants already that the son's interested in. He likes going out there. She goes out there. So, um, and she did kind of say to me that this is something that she would like to kind of build upon with her son and be active with her son. So, I would say, especially she has to drive by this to park her car. And so, I'm thinking she has to walk by it every day to get to her car and go back home every night. So, um,
Okay.
but this
So she's
would be
out there.
her, yeah, this would be like her, you know, first garden to maintain herself.
Are there any rules in this community, like as far as how things have to be maintained?
I mean, I don't look into those things, Sam. But
Yeah,
if I was to
but they'll
speculate,
come at her though.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if the biggest thing I would say would be the trees, but I don't, as far as I know. So this is in Winter Garden,
Okay.
and they are pretty big on, um, letting people have front yard gardens. I think they're more concerned about you cutting down trees than planting them. Um,
Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. To keep it
sure.
looking pretty and still be productive, I mean, 2 or 3 raised beds, like on this side of the door, um, do, some kind of landscape fabric underneath them to keep the grass down. I mean, really just like cut the sod, but there'd still be weeds. So just some landscape fabric in a little square. And that's landscape fabric that's permeable. Water can pass through it, still get into the soil. And then around those beds, we plant moringa trees and pigeon peas. The loquat, I know you've said that a couple times, and it sounds like you're excited about it, but I don't really think that's a good idea.
Okay. Tell me why.
Long term, it's not gonna make sense. It's gonna have to be removed.
Okay.
Loquat's not really one. I mean, people, you can prune it and keep it small, but it's not going to be as productive just because of the size. Less branches means less fruit. Um, and you could fit something in here that's going to be a lot more productive and be less of a nuisance. Um, the very first thing that pops into my head is a star fruit. Uh, that could be a good one. Guava. That's not a very large tree. You know, with the large trees, it's if you're not gonna have to deal with the problems in 40 or 50 years, it can make sense to just shove a big tree in a small place. But if you're really planting for longevity, if you plant a massive tree 4 feet off a house, it's going to get cut down before it really gets to grow into its own. So it's not really worth it. You know, I wouldn't plant citrus here, but that is like the size of tree that you would kind of go for. But what I'm kind of envisioning, you've got some raised beds, and that's your herbs, that's your kitchen vegetables, things she can walk straight out the door, harvest, and then bring straight back into the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And then around it, you incorporate the moringas, pigeon peas. I mean, you could do cassava out here. There's enough space for that. Things like that will grow some canopy, give some shade to the annuals, improve the soil conditions, but still are able to be maintained and manicured, because it is like, right next to her house. And so what she won't want is like crazy, clutter and growth mounding on the sides of the house. Because that can just lead to, bigger problems later on, especially
Sure.
if this is like a new home and she's planning on living here for a while. It's best to take care of it early on. The grass, isn't really, you don't have to spend too much time worrying about the grass. Where you plant the trees, remove it, especially if it's fresh sod. It'll be pretty easy to get out. But grass doesn't really compete with like perennial plants. It really just makes them way more difficult to take care of, because, we like our grass cut and not grown crazy. And then you find yourself pulling grass or weed eating around the trees to make them look nice. And then you end up damaging the trees. So, if there's like little bits of grass left over, it's not really a problem. As the trees grow and create shade, that's going to get rid of a lot of this. The other thing that I would incorporate into the ground is bunching grass species. So like, maybe along this driveway or along the sidewalk, planting some native bunching grasses like love grass or mully grass, even Fakahatchee grass deeper in, to use as like nutrient cyclers, but also to fill space, outcompete weeds, and just, add some ornamentality to the bed. Because you really do want it to look nice, especially since she's going to see it every day.
Sure.
The prettier the garden is, the more people are inclined to actually like get out there. When it looks like a crazy mess, it's like they can't even wrap their minds around what to
Sure.
do out there. The pineapples, you could use pineapples as like a border also, along the edges of this. They would do really well out here.
Now
yeah,
these moringa, pigeon pea, the native grasses, the pineapples, you're saying to just pull out a patch of this fresh sod and just bury them in there, or get them planted in the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you could even do, which would, since it's a homeowner and a friend and you're just, doing it, what the best thing to do would be to get a sod cutter, cut the sod. The sod cutter has blades and it goes underneath and cuts the roots. And then you can flip that sod over so that all the green material is now underneath, and then it'll die. And then it'll be that first layer of organic material into the new food forest. Now, when you do that, you want to flip it and then keep it dry for a couple weeks so it dies. So you don't want to plant anything into it immediately. So that's why, better if you have some time. But especially on a small scale like this, it'd be pretty easy to cut out a section, flip it over, and if you got a tarp, just throw it on top of there, and then come back in like 2 or 3 weeks, take it off, and just plant straight in.
Okay.
Um,
Now, another concern I have is apparently there's somebody that's going to mow all these properties. So, assuming this person cares about mowing and not about native plants or a garden, you know, what steps? I mean, I guess her one of her family members has a bunch of bricks, so I was considering, bricking up like an area around the bottoms of the trees so that they're well defined. So, Mr. Mower Man comes along, he's not going to cut down a pigeon pea because it looks like a 2-week-old weed or something.
yeah, you're definitely on the right path. With lawn care and lawn service guys, you have to define what is a bed. You can't just have plants growing in the grass, because that makes their jobs more difficult. And I mean, usually they're not really concerned about those things. So, I mean, what I would say, we're talking about eliminating the grass. You cut the sod, you flip it over, there's no more grass growing there, and then you plant your species in that. As long as you're doing that in solid blocks, like, what you don't want is a patch of dead grass with a tree and some plants in it, and then grass, and then another patch of dead grass with a tree and some plants in it. You want to connect those two patches, and then there's just one bed that then the lawn guy is like, okay, one edge there, I can run the mower, the weed eater along that, and that's fine. They're the people mowing our lawns are just normal people, and they can see obvious things. There's grass and then a stark contrast next to that. We don't mow that. But if it was like it is now, and then say you had a moringa tree and some stuff just growing through the grass, at the very least, you're making their jobs a lot more difficult, because I mean, then they either have to leave some grass around the tree or get way too close to your tree to, actually get the grass down. So really just defining the beds, using those bricks, but just making sure that you consolidate the beds. It's, ideally you would just have one bed, with one edge around the bed. And so like with what we're talking about here, if you did some raised beds, if you planted some borders of grasses and pineapples and planted some moringas and pigeon peas, you could probably eliminate all the sod in here and just make this whole block, a bed with the raised beds, with the trees all included in that one bed. And then they just, wouldn't have to worry about mowing this block, which I feel like has to make their jobs easier, because they're still getting paid to come out, and now they just have less to do.
Sure. I'm fine if I can't plant a loquat, but because I have so many loquat trees, for some reason people don't want to buy them. I'll give you a loquat.
I'll take it. It'll fit my yard.
It's funny. Years ago, when I didn't have loquats, I had people asking me if I had, you got the Japanese plums. I said, oh, I'll have them, in a year or so from now, once I get the seeds going. Now I've got 2 and 3 foot tall loquat trees. They're a year and a half old, and apparently next door, if it's not a missing dog or police or someone walking in front of your home, it's not really a concern. So, but nonetheless, I was considering, especially this part at the end here. So where she turns, that's her car, where she turns and parks her car, decent amount of space. What if we had a large 25-gallon pot with a, I mean, how big is a loquat tree going to get in a 25-gallon pot? I mean, is that still sizable enough where she'd get some fruit from it in a couple of years?
Well, I mean, definitely she would get some fruit from it in a couple of years. You know, if she was going to grow it out in a pot, I would do at least like a 35-gallon.
Okay.
Ideally, if you're going to grow a tree or any plant in a pot permanently, you either want to have a fabric pot so that the roots can grow into the sides, or you want to take it out and trim the roots periodically so that they're not all just, growing around in circles in the pot. If it's a short-term desire, like if she's fine with putting this tree in a 25-gallon pot, having it for like 5 to 8 years, and then it dying or it just becoming less productive, if that's an okay outcome, then you could definitely go for it. And honestly, I would say at that point, just shove it in the ground, really. And then, like, if it becomes a problem, just take it out. That's really, I mean, you mentioned earlier, not like Winter Park not wanting to cut down trees, but that is the nicest thing about using trees as infrastructure, is that if they become a problem, you can just cut them down.
Right.
Yeah,
we're not talking about a development where they go in and just cut down every tree to put new homes on. We're talking about
clear cutting is a problem and unnecessary. Yeah. Like a lot of those trees were not problems, and they were just taken out.
Yeah.
But if you're I mean, the 25-gallon pot may be a good way to go. The problem it'll have that way is that she'll have to make sure she's watering it all the time, because it won't really ever get enough water on its own, and that pot will dry out. And if she puts it in the ground right here, the problems won't come up for like 20 to 30 years. And the first problem will be the fruit dropping on the driveway, which is annoying and, less of a problem for some people than others. Kind of depends on your mindset. The next problem, though, will be that the roots will start to break up the driveway. And, any closer to the house, the roots would eventually get under the foundation of the house. So, I mean,
is that a concern for moringa being so close to the house?
No, because that's a short-term tree.
Okay.
And I mean, I wouldn't say there's no worry about it, but since the moringas really, after 10 years, they can start to die off on their own. Their root systems never really get that established. That loquat could live for 100 years, and, the trunk of it could
cause 100-year problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, these homeowners may never face. But I mean, they might, it's a new house. They might pass it down to their kids.
I'm sure that concrete isn't fully cured, because I know concrete.
Yeah. That looks like it was poured yesterday.
Yeah. Now, just looking at this space, Sam, are there any, like a Barbados cherry or something that,
That's a good one.
Okay.
Shrubby things, pomegranate, like a Vietnamese pomegranate. It's probably not the most attractive thing to put out in front of your house, but that kind of size. I'm trying to think of some other bushy stuff.
A guava would go well here.
Yeah, it would fit the space real well. That's probably like 15 or 20 feet on that corner.
Yeah.
And now you're never going to get canopy from a guava, but it's also, never really going to cause any problems.
not my property nor my decision, but on both sides of this quad where these four houses are, there's empty lot. I don't know what people hang out there, but another empty lot on both sides. There's been talk of the people donating and possibly starting a garden, food forest, whatever. I don't know what conversations have been happening there. I'm not privy to those, but um, you know, maybe a 25-gallon pot would make sense until they find out what's going on with that lot next door, and then it just goes in the ground. It becomes the first tree in the community garden. So
yeah, if there's a space in mind that potentially it could go in the future, then putting it in a pot now, getting it grown out, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Especially if you've already got the trees, they're already in pots. You know,
they're outgrowing their pots. So please, if you want a loquat and you're in the Orlando area, we can trade. I don't have to sell it to you. You can trade me something special. So, I mean, I got a Genepa tree because it was a awkward, weird tree I never heard of, and it sounds cool and it's thriving. So,
oh, those are delicious. I'm gonna come get some of those fruit when they're ready.
Within a couple of years, the thing is really taking off right now. So, okay, well, that's definitely given me some good insight here. I think a garden bed is what we're going to get established, and maybe a large bed. So would you we go back here, this area here, would it make sense to layer the whole thing with some cardboard and just bury it with some soil on top, build some beds, lay some cardboard down, or do you think the permeable fabric is the way to go?
If you're gonna do for raised beds, you're talking about?
Yes.
So the thing about the raised beds and why I recommend the landscape fabric for them is because it's forever. You don't really want stuff growing around them ever because those are your pathways. If you do cardboard and mulch, it'll be a temporary solution, but eventually stuff is going to grow and it's going to require constant mulch.
Sure.
Now the landscape fabric, it's not perfect either. Eventually stuff will grow through it, but much more slowly than the cardboard will be gone in a month. And unless you do you'd have to do 10 inches of wood chip mulch to really suppress the grass. Either way, I would recommend, getting the grass out first before you put anything down. And I mean, honestly, the landscape fabric is just going to be an easier solution. You'll to mulch it that much, if you have a chip drop and you get a couple yards of mulch and you're just sitting on it, and you have cardboard and you can do it all for free like that, then that's probably the way to go. But if you got to buy something, I would just buy the landscape fabric because it'll be easier to just lay it down and then not worry about it than to, keep throwing mulch on it. Now for the rest, around the trees and, in the in-ground planting area, no landscape fabric. That will just be soil. And, you'll still I recommend flipping that sod if you have the time to do that. But then you could do cardboard and, heavy mulch around that. Just start building organic carbon in the soil.
And so flip the sod and put it on, don't flip it in place, put it on like a tarp or something to.
No, flip it in place and then put a tarp on top of everything. Yeah. Just to let it dry out.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, my biggest concern was just this tight space and what trees could eventually do to the foundation or the driveway, and
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And it is a tight space, but the key is just, think about the other layers, focus on younger things. This is not a space that can ever, become a forest on its own. So, trees will not be the main feature here, but there can still be a lot of production in the space that's available. You just gotta, berry bushes, throw in blueberries and blackberries, along with the Barbados cherries and the star fruit, smaller things like that mixed in with, I mean, if she cooks, then having herbs and annual veggies will make it, a more interesting process, because then you're dealing with stuff every day. You've got stuff to harvest and eat immediately. And then, if as she's gardening, you can always include trees over time as you find things that may work. And the trees are going to have a better chance at that point because you've already done a lot of soil building work already. So, a lot of times I try to show people that especially like if you want a perennial garden with fruit trees, if you want a food forest, the trees are not the place to start. And sometimes, like in this case, they may not even be the place to finish. But, unless you're already planting in like a forest type environment, you really need to take the successional steps to create that forest, at least soil. So by, incorporating some perennial species like the grasses and the short-term trees and shrubs, that's going to improve the soil here a lot, because this is probably builder's sands they got this stuff leveled with. So, then later on, if she wants to just throw in some stuff, you'd probably be able to grow citrus here once the soil's improved. So, that can come later on. But the main focus right now, if she wants to plant in it, ever, is just building a healthier environment here. And then the annuals in raised beds can give you some return on all that work in the meantime while you're building soil, and then, you eat the moringa, you eat the pigeon peas, eat the cassava. A lot more work than some people are used to, but it's a great crop.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Yeah. Well, that gives me that went from planting a couple fruit trees in the ground to building garden beds, but
Yeah, it's never as easy as you think it's going to be, but this sounds like a cool thing. Let me know when you want to do something on it. Maybe I'll swing by and we can look at it together.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that was great.
Yeah, I hope I answer your questions and you can relay some of that to the homeowner, and hopefully some of that helped you all out there. Maybe you have a small area, even if your area, isn't small like that, those same techniques are really where you need to start. If you want a food forest, don't worry about, what trees you're going to plant and get in the ground first. Just focus on, what you're going to use to build biomass, build organic matter in the soil. And then, do some little beds of some quick veggies to make yourself smile.
And this is a great moment to say to everyone watching, if you have an area of your yard, a piece of your garden, a fruit tree that is not thriving, or something that you would like us to take a look at and see how we can help you, shoot a video. Landscape view would be preferred. Hopefully less than 2 minutes so that it will send to us in the proper format. But yeah, just like this video here where we're, helping a friend and figure out what's best for her to grow, not just, long-term for her brand new house that she doesn't destroy, but also what really makes sense for her to maintain. So yeah, you can message myself, Mike's in the Garden, or Sam at Central Florida Abundance, and maybe it ends up on a future episode. All right, now I'd like to share a friend of ours and inspiration to myself. Our friend Jim Gale at Food Forest Abundance. Jim Gale at Food Forest Abundance. Golf's Landing is an incredible demonstration. This could be a whole episode itself. So I will share this here. You can go check out this here. You can go check out a lot of what's growing on. Jim has these growing not your conventional gardener. Not your conventional gardener. So just be forewarned. I mean, if you're here watching, be forewarned. I mean, if you're here watching, if you've seen some of my spicy memes, you know, maybe Jim is the guy for you, but maybe Jim is the guy for you. But huge inspiration to me. That's how I huge inspiration to me. That's how I kind of got started in my backyard with the Forest Abundance. Forest Abundance, friends with Jim. Shout out to Food Forest Abundance. Shout out to Food Forest Abundance. Food forests at schools and prison. Forests at schools and prison, doing what they can to turn lawns into lawn edible landscapes, into edible landscapes, and grow food. Grow food. Shout out to those guys over there. So shout out to those guys over there. Sam, this was an excellent episode. Really kind of showcased some of your skills here. So if somebody would like to reach out to you and have you come to their property, which you've done several times for myself, which is a whole playlist of videos that you can check out with Sam here in my food forest, where can they reach out?
Yeah, you can check out Central Florida Abundance on Instagram and Facebook. You can send me a direct message through there or through my email. If you're interested in a consultation, or if you're in Polk County and you're interested in buying some local produce, you can check out igofarm.com or the iGo Family Farm on Instagram to see what we're growing out here on our property. And then if you want to check out some of Mike's stuff, where are they going to find you, man?
Mike's in the garden, Instagram for the spicy memes. Twitter might be a little more hardcore, but I know it's called X. I think I'll never call it X. Mostly just Twitter.
If, man.
Yeah. But yeah, YouTube is where you're most likely watching this. Make sure you subscribe to Sam on Central Florida Abundance. And if you're watching on Central Florida Abundance, make sure you go subscribe to Mike's in the Garden. And this isn't an original shirt. This is a shirt I got in the Galapagos. I love boobies. This is a blue-footed booby, which is a bird. Okay, there's red-footed boobies. There's Nazca boobies. And
you love all the boobies.
We do. We're booby lovers here. So, but I do curate some pretty fascinating and eloquent designs. So make sure you head on over to the Etsy shop if you want to support this channel. For the $2 that they give me after shipping and everything else, it helps buy some rolling papers. I guess that's